I'm so tired. I haven't slept a wink. I'm so tired. My mind is on the blink. I wonder, should I go and fix myself a drink? You'd say, I'm putting you on, but it's no joke. It's doing me harm, I can't sleep. I can't stop my brain. It's 3 weeks. I'm going insane. Give me everything you got for a little peace of mind. What's going on, my friends? How are we doing? How are we doing? Let's see here. Updated affiliate links and discount codes are in the description. So says Coro. That might be true. The Discord link may be going not so live in a moment because that link expires every. There's one type of link that expires every 3 days. There's one that expires every 7. Both are annoying, but hopefully they're still doing okay. Hey, Jesus, hello. I need to call you, or we need to chat this week for sure. Yeah, we should do that. Just message me or call me tomorrow at some point. Let's see here. Diesel, hello. Robert Bennett, what's going on? Coro, there you go, buddy. Thanks. 2 years and change. Finally built yourself a Discord. Yeah, that's right. The Discord is up. It is alive, and I like it. I am learning with everybody else that is new to Discord. So if you're like an old pro at Discord, then you probably think that, oh, Alex is a simpleton. Uh, you know, he's just now learning Discord. But we do have the Discord set up, and what I wanted to show you guys on this, let's just make this big. Let's just make this. You guys don't need to see me right this moment. We can do full screen layout. All right. So the Discord. Randy, hello. Angel, hello. Good to see y'all. Uncle Smiley's Aquarium, hello. David Rayner, hello. Pets Corner, good to see you. Robert Bennett, good to see you as well. Linda, hello. Linz, hello. Julio and K Day. Laura Taylor, hello. Johnny, what's going on? And Aqua Escapes, what's going on? As well as Guppy Dundee, I like that name. And G Carlton. Do I know any fish that can live without filtration? Oh boy, howdy do I. And Dionysius, what's going on? So we're in the Discord right now. That is what you are seeing on your screen. And what I wanted to show you guys is, so I had an episode that's doing terribly. I think it just didn't send out anybody it didn't send out a lot of info to folks, and I posted it at a weird time. But there, it's got 6 likes on the Discord out of whatever 200 people that are members now. But what I'm saying is, so my most recent video, it's on nanoplastics, and it is a audio based episode, so you can listen to it in the car while doing water changes. You can even listen to it at 1.5 speed on the playback thing on YouTube if you prefer, because I do kind of talk a little slow in this totally unedited format that is very much like a podcast. So those audio episodes that I call Fishtory, and I know that's confusing because it's the name of the channel, but back when the channel was The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium, we called the actual episodes that were short podcast episodes, we called them Fishtory because they were featured on another channel that used to show daily, as well as on Father Fish's channel from time to time. But so what I wanted to show you is, even if you're not a paying member, just if you want to be a part of the community on Fishtory, this is what I'm kind of doing, which is I'll post the episode, and if it seems like it might be a topic where people are interested or they want to see the sources because I'm saying something like specifically reading about one research article or journal article, like peer-reviewed science type stuff, I'll post, obviously, it'll post whatever episode is out most recently in the YouTube notifications section of Fishtory. So once you go to my picture here and Fishtory !! server, you just go over and you go to right there at the top, Fishtory announcements. That's where you'll find this. And then what I posted here is I posted the actual scientific journal articles. Any of them that I can share widely, I will share here. If they are a personal email type share, so like if it's $40 to see the article normally, and I'm only getting access to it from the permission of the creator or the authors of the article, a lot of times they don't want to get in trouble with their university and whatnot. And so if I get kind of a wink and a nod access by emailing them and asking to share it, that will be actually on the actual channel chat, like over in Free Fishtory. People are chatting and hanging out and talking about all sorts of stuff, sharing pictures and content. And then for the very first entry level, that's where I will be putting probably in the general category or in documents. Right in here, I'm sharing all sorts of articles that link up, as well as any of the slides or things like that. So for if you want to become a member for $2.99, which was the cheapest I could make it for y'all, here's where those files are. You just have to be that lowest level member, and I'm gonna make everything available at that lowest level, either under documents or general. But that, and some of it, like today, I'll probably do for free. So under like Fishtory announcements, YouTube notifications, I may put in this or in the general chat, but just keep an eye out, because this sometimes has some interesting stuff, like the actual nanoplastic stuff. This I found fascinating. They went with the first up at the top of Greenland, that there are 13.2 nanograms of nanoplastics per milliliter. That's in ice cores 15 feet deep. And at the South Pole, they're finding 52 nanograms per milliliter. You know how small a milliliter is? It's 1 cubic centimeter of water. And in that milliliter, there are 52 molecules or nanograms worth of actual plastic material and harmful chemicals. And that's 15 feet into the ice. Why is there even plastic in the ice? Well, it's because of bacteria. It's because of snow and rainfall, and well, not rainfall usually. It's usually snow. If it's, I mean, it might rain around the edges a couple months of the year, but it's mostly snowfall and sleet and hail and stuff like that. But it has little bits of dust in it that have these plastic precursors. But beyond all that, the food chain down there has it. And beyond all that, even volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean, like sulfuric vents and things, and aquifers that are deep underground, they're finding microplastics in caves that humans have never been to. Like, they open the chamber and they find that there are, well, rather, nanoplastics. And the most relevant thing to our channel that I wanted to talk about, and that maybe folks didn't see, or maybe they were bored by it, but I think it's very important, and I think that the Green Earth Alliance, myself and Ivan Mikolji, will be tackling this issue as time goes on. But nanoplastics are absolutely insane. And yes, exactly, local grow guy, like wildfire smoke. That's another one. But nanoplastics are worse than microplastics. Microplastics are, they're not great, but they are the, chunks, the particles of plastic. Whereas nanoplastics are like, that smell when you open a plastic container that's new and it just smells like plastic. That can be trace gases and material that off gas, or when you get new carpet or a mattress, there's all these different chemicals that off gas, as well as when it degrades or when UV light hits it and plastic breaks down. That makes even smaller pieces that break off, single molecules sometimes. And that, they're saying, is showing up in fish in amazingly high amounts. Like, we're talking millions of parts per billions of parts, if that makes sense to you. So in some cases, if there are if they take a biopsy of like a fish's spleen or liver or kidney or muscle, unfortunately, they're finding that there are more plastic particles than there are biological actual fish cells in many cases. And they're also showing that these microplastics, some of them are so small that they can go into a cell even without the cell trying to consume it. And so they can go in through the cell membrane or wall of organisms and slip through. Some of them have actual chemical, like a key that tricks the cell into letting it in. But a lot of times, what happens to try to dumb it down, because it's a very complex topic, but I want to make an analogy. If you know about the topic, you might say, Alex, that's not exactly how it works. So pardon me, but you have something like a door on a cell, and the doors open and close to let things in, like food. And maybe that cell gets food and energy coming in through blood or through water, or whatever it may be, it through a fluid, and it lets it in and then it closes it. And there's basically a key that knocks on the door of the cell and says, hey, I got some food, open up. Or, hey, we're rubbing against food, here's an ion or a molecule that fits in and is triggering the cell to open up and take in that food, or to take in that debris, whatever it may be, those nutrients. Well, this, sometimes some of the plastic compounds can mimic that, open the cell up, and then the cell literally will swell with water or salt or whatever, different things in different situations. But they will sell, you kind of doubt the cell wall absorption. Read the scientific paper. I mean, it talks about it. That's why it's posted on the Discord for everyone to see, because I think it's pretty crazy. They're very, very concerned about this fact. So the whole paper talking about freshwater ecosystems is saying that basically they are shocked, that scientists are really shocked, the fact that nanoplastics, not microplastics that are the ones you can see with your eye, but the actual before our eye can even see it, so microscopic truly, down in these single molecules sometimes, or a cluster of molecules, they're so small that they're entering cells without the cell even letting it in. Like, it can get through the cell membrane in some cases, or the cell is letting food in, but those particles are so small that they get in with the food. And it only takes a few of these particles to do some serious damage. They're seeing things like the nucleus of a single cell in its single lifetime being very damaged, the DNA, by these nanoplastics. And nanoplastics are kind of a new frontier in that we hadn't studied nanoplastics so much as plastic particulate matter. And particles, chunks of plastic, may not be as big of an issue as we originally thought they would be, in that they are actually finding bacteria and fungi that are breaking them down. And in some cases, as long as those materials that they break down into are placed away from other food chains, or they're bioaccumulated by like a fungus or a bacteria, and they're in the substrate or in, down in the soil, that might not be the worst thing ever in the long run. It may be that they actually can break down and be biodegradable to some degree. We've seen in Japan where actual bacteria has evolved already in the last 75 years at a recycling plant, and it's eating the PVC and plastic material that it lives on. There's a type of bacteria that's already started to eat it. So that's kind of cool and that's great. But what's going on is the microplastics, they were looking at those and thinking, well, that maybe it's not the end of the world, because cyanobacteria and other life forms are kind of growing on, a piece that's the size of, for instance, a piece of little confetti or glitter, little chip of plastic. But when we get down to the molecule, down to the few molecules, very, very small nanoparticles, that's where it gets really crazy. And that's what they're saying is shocking, is that they're finding things like zooplankton, daphnia, and other things smaller than what we can see with our eye. So the size of right on the edge of what we can see. So things like seed shrimp and daphnia, young daphnia, and things like that, planaria. Those creatures and smaller, they're seeing that the nanoplastics are actually doing cell damage, and even in some cases killing, in controlled studies where they put, they made a pond essentially, and they just took pond water and put it in basically with a bunch of different organisms, a bunch of different nematodes, and they had fish and everything. They have a whole ecosystem in one of the studies. And it's just kind of crazy because we thought plastics kind of had to bioaccumulate. So maybe, a shark eats a chunk of plastic and then it dies. And maybe something comes along, a scavenger, and eats the shark's liver. And maybe that's where some of the plastic was, its stomach. There's some more of it. And we kind of thought that that was like how plastics were going to be working. But it turns out that they're much more dangerous, in that some of the less complex molecules are more dangerous because they're getting into singular cells of zooplankton, of single cell algae, and various like diatoms even. So they mentioned that diatom algae was taking on these nanoplastics. And so the animals that graze on biofilms and algae are directly taking in those nanoplastics, and that effect could be pretty bad, especially since then bigger animals eat those, and then bigger animals eat those. So maybe a catfish comes along and eats that, and then maybe a shark or something else comes and eats the catfish, or a pike or something. Whatever it may be, it can still bioaccumulate the nanoplastics and the microplastics. So it's a pretty disturbing new thing. But what I wanted to say is that the Discord, that's where I'm going to put the links, so that if you guys want more background, if you wanted to see the chart, like what I was saying, when we looked at this full screen mode, here's the study right here. Nanoplastics rewire freshwater food chains. You can see that test where they looked at the nanoplastics on the North Pole, the up at, well, Greenland, not quite the North Pole, but you can see that they even got it broken down into what the plastics are: PE, PET, PS, PVC, tire particles, and PP. Now, PE is the vast majority of what is showing up, and PET is the next biggest category up on the North Pole, whereas PP is the next biggest category down at the sea ice down at the South Pole in Antarctica area, which again, not quite the pole, but they're calling it that. And I just think that that's pretty interesting. But you guys can actually go here. You can actually click on the articles and check out, the information for yourself. And that's what I want to encourage as a channel, is I want to encourage people to do the research themselves. Don't believe me. I'm just some schmuck. But go do the research and find out what you think about it yourself. I may not have all the right interpretations, obviously, even if I am getting good information. You never know. Maybe I'm not understanding it the proper way, and maybe there's a scientist on here that can say, hey Alex, actually it's this way or whatever. But anyways, guys, I don't want to talk about that all day. I want to see what you guys are up to, so let me check out the chat real quick, and we'll do that. I have heard of China making foods with plastics. Oh man, that's crazy. I don't know. That could very well be. I mean, there are a lot of industrial products used as like fillers, and there's also a lot of products that are just contaminated with plastic. Um, and yes, there is a lot of bias in research. I agree, Dennis. For sure. There's a lot, and we should look at who's funding these research studies. That's why the one in particular about the microplastics versus nanoplastics and the poles, like what they did was they tried to come up with places on Earth that they wouldn't find plastics, and basically, other than coring out very deep into ice like deposits or into the ground where it's like hard bedrock, they're not finding spots. They're finding even in like granite deposits 10 meters deep, they're still finding a few parts per billion, which is hardly anything, but still, it's like, wow, it's off gassed into there over the last 50 to 100 years. It's off gassed into all these crazy remote places all around the world through rain and through water and through bacteria living in the cracks of things and then dying. And another bacteria may eat that bacteria and clean up the source, so to speak, but ends up moving along in the food chain or getting pushed along by water or wind or whatever. That's what's crazy too, is like it may get into the groundwater and then it gets into, say, an aquifer, and then that gets into an underwater stream or river or like just even a fault line or crack, and then it's literally been found coming out of vents, hydrothermal vents that are like hot springs and things. They've found concentrations of plastics and things coming out higher there, as well as hydrocarbons. That's where our fish oftentimes get like minerality in their water and things, is from underground springs. So it's kind of crazy to think of these things that so often we kind of assume are like, oh, that's the best place to get water from, or, right off a glacier or right from the springs. But yeah, it should be investigated, but I'm not sure what can be done. That's what you're saying. Yeah, Dennis, I agree. And yeah, I don't know what we can do other than try to reduce the amount of plastics we're using. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, nobody should use plastics. I'm just saying, hey, maybe we should be aware of these things when we start noticing that, oh, they can do these types of things to the environment, and we've only had them around for 50 to 100 years. That's not very long to understand like what the impact's going to be in a lot of cases, especially if we're talking about after the microplastics, or like say you got a bottle and it's been floating in the ocean for 50 years and it broke down into the constituent parts, and you just got these little teeny like glitter sized pieces of plastic. It's the chemicals coming off of that as that breaks down that is probably more disturbing now with these findings. Let's see here. Mick says, and grasping species are often the main food for predation too, right? So perhaps, grazing. Yeah. So perhaps we may soon see results inside those species. That's exactly right, Mick. So that study, the one talking about freshwater ecosystems, was saying that in their little control room, so they were looking at the wild and nature, but in their control study where they built a little pond in the lab, they had a few species that went completely extinct in the lab, and they've built the same things to be replicatable. Like they actually did an inventory of the bacteria and the various things that they were introducing with eDNA. And if you read the whole procedural on the paper, you can find all that out. But it's really dry. But if you wanted to know, you can look up that content. And so that's what is interesting, though, is that yeah, some of the diatomaceous algae, for instance, died in their study. Like the cells themselves were poisoned by the toxicity levels of nanoplastics, and it was like 54 parts per million, and that's not very high. Remember, at the polls, they were finding 54.3 or whatever was what the average was. So it's pretty crazy that that can be impacting things. Now, the other thing that the study found was that cyanobacteria, as a kingdom in general, was not impacted like the others were, which is rather interesting because maybe cyanobacteria will be what breaks it down. But they're finding for now that that's really bad, because when we get eutrophication, when we already have nitrogen in the form of fertilizer and farm runoff, and we get phosphates as the same super high in our water, then we have it go out into nature, and all of a sudden we'll have that going out into the ocean, and you'll find these big eutrophied dead zones, as they call them, where algae and cyanobacteria has bloomed, but nothing else that should be living there, like plankton and microorganisms and kelp and macro algae. None of that is present. It all has been clouded out and died. So yeah. Oh, my microphone just like fell asleep on me. All right, guys. So let's see here. Do, 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 do. Mike Myers, what's going on, buddy? And Cheryl Smith, good to see you. Spider Lady, hello. And Alabib, hello. What's up, buddy? Huge supporter of the saying, nature finds a way. There are bacteria and fungi that evolved to eat plastics, so there is still hope. Yep, I agree with that for sure. That there is probably going to be, I mean, they've already found a species of bacteria and a species of fungi that eat jet fuel, like rocket fuel, which is some gnarly stuff. They've also found that there's bacteria that eat arsenic happily. So there's something out there that has probably evolved to do something. But the problem is when you get these complex chains, they're finding that some of these molecules are complex and they're big molecules in the sense that they can almost act like free radicals or oxygenators that do damage to cells at a cellular level, yet they're small enough still that they're getting into single cell organisms, which are a lot bigger than single cells in most cases of a larger organism. But it's kind of a new frontier, and that's what's kind of wild, is we just don't know yet. And of course, amphibians and fish and these creatures that have things like slime coats and biofilms, and they graze or they eat, billions of krill in their lifetime. If those billions of krill have some chemical in them, it builds up and bioaccumulates in the fish very quickly. And that's why we see that, like, the apex predators or apex of a food web a lot of times will show a concentration of these chemicals. And we knew that was going to happen. That was predictable. But the unpredictable part has been the fact that all the way at the bottom of the food chain, they're finding large, quote unquote, large amounts, at least amounts large enough to cause cell death or damage going on already, which that's just really surprising to the researchers in that study. And they were concerned enough to hold a global summit on it coming up. So let's stay tuned. But anyways, hey Alex, Noel Wen, welcome. Yeah, it's been around for a while, but getting worse and worse as we understand more about it. Yeah, totally. I hear you. I mean, that's the thing, is we should just be educated about it and understand it. And then if you have the choice, maybe don't buy plastic. I mean, like Europe already has made a lot of great choices. But in America, we buy a lot of, like, a lot of people, myself included, will have plastic bottles all over the house where it's like, could I have just had a glass one or a reusable thing, or like maybe just skip buying a bottle of water altogether? Like, if it were priced too high, I wouldn't have bought this, but it was 50 cents for this whole thing. So, or 59 cents. So I bought it at Trader Joe's. But if it were in a different container, like a can, put water in a can or a bottle, then perhaps I would have not done so. Um, let's see here. Tiffany Grove, what's going on? What we are doing to the diversity. Yeah, that's the other thing, is we got to keep up diversity in our plants and in our, not be growing monocultures, and not be farming one species of fish or one species of this or that. We should be utilizing a whole host of things that live in different niches. That way there's never one that we're relying on, and when it fails, boom, everything falls out from under it, the proverbial rug pull. Probably why. I don't know. Do you have bad issues? Shrimple stuff. That name, Shrimple. I mean, it's simple, but it's shrimp. But it also sounds kind of like pimple. I'm torn on your name, buddy. I love it, and I'm also slightly disturbed by saying it out loud. But welcome also. Uh, Off topic, Joseph says there's no off topic. So can you summarize how my method differs from Father Fish video? Um, you couldn't find your answer in the video where I titled it about how I differ. So there are a lot of subtle ways in which Father Fish and I differ from things, but here, let me list the main ways, because I think this is important, in that I'm friends with Lou. I have known Lou, or Father Fish, for now 7 or 8 years, and we've been in contact channel wise and as friends, chatting. He and I have very, very different political and personal, like religious views and stuff. And we've talked a lot about that one-on-one. That doesn't matter to the channel at all. But, he's vocal about his view on certain things, like when he went during elections and stuff. He was very big on the MAGA stuff. And I choose to kind of keep out of that unless it's a specific issue that is impacting our hobby. Like, for instance, when they were talking about the Lacey Act and banning all aquarium species for fresh and saltwater. That was scary when that was going on. The competes, or compete, whatever you want to call it, competes Lacey Act thing. But that's when you'll hear me out there talking. Or if it's something like a trade deal that's going to impact our goods coming from China and the price of things, whether you think that's good or bad, doesn't matter to me. But I want to report on the fact that, like, oh, glass is getting a 30% tariff, or everything coming out of here is going to have this or that. And I try to cover that in the more economic facing, like, approximations. But he and I have different opinions on some of that stuff. And about the aquarium end of things, his opinion, one, is that he believes that the one thing that he says on his channel that I have an issue with, that started as our kind of gap in not agreeing on everything too, is he was very anti-climate change, in the sense that he doesn't think that it's changing much, and or that if it is, it's not human related, it's just life in general. And I am of the opinion that it is changing a lot. It has always changed a lot. We can't tell for sure what's human or not, but in some cases it's definitely human influenced. And I am of the opinion that we should keep an open mind to things that may be making it worse, like hydrocarbons and using fossil fuels and things. And that comes up a lot in preservation of the oceans and preservation of freshwater ecology and freshwater biomes. But as far as the aquarium hobby goes, we also have differences in the idea of, he doesn't believe that nitrates are a problem in the aquarium. He thinks that you can have 400 parts per million nitrates and that's fine. I believe more recent research where they looked at salmon fry, they looked at Danio fry, they looked at guppy fry, and they found that they had some big rates, something like 12 times the mutation in a bad way, like being born with limitations that basically made the fish non-viable. So like it was going to die before it even grew up. Like their spine gets deformed and things because of the high nitrate levels, or their liver or nervous system doesn't form right. You know, their eyes, they end up blind, things like that. But they found all the way down into 20 to 40 parts per million that some of the species of fish were being impacted by nitrates, according to the most recent peer-reviewed research. So that's what I default to. I say that, you know, maybe it's not the end of the world. It's not going to kill your adult fish if your nitrates creep up. But I think it does clearly, we can prove that it shows a stress response in fish, like their slime coat becomes more active. They begin to be more agitated or show glass surfing, like going back and forth on the glass with their nose, or being alone and not hanging out with the group of fish. Um, Things like being less active, all of that stuff that behaviorally we see a difference in as the nitrates increase. I think it's good to keep your nitrates below 100 parts per million, for instance. So, how does that change our philosophy? You may be thinking, Alex, what does this have to do with anything? Well, it has a lot to do with how many plants you should have. And his method has changed over time. He used to be focused completely on deep sand bed substrate. And he used to be focused on things like only plants, like bulb plants, like Aponegeton and lilies, and, you know, throw in a little bit of hornwater val or something here and there. But now he has changed that and said, you need a bunch of stem plants. And I agree with that. That is a change that I think his method needed to help out your average fish keeper. Now, there are ways to keep fish in systems without doing water changes. I also don't think, though, you should go out to your local swamp, grab a bucket of putrid water that smells like sulfur, and throw that in your new aquarium in hopes of sparking new life. I do believe that you can get sources like that, put them in a jar, see what lives for a couple weeks, and then you can select, you know, scuds or larvae from insects or whatever it may be. I guess algae or bacteria as well, and you can intensify or enrich your aquarium with that. But I am of the opinion that we should do it a little more methodically. Like we should know, all right, I want to put these little scuds that are present, or these little water beetles that I found in my local pond, I want them in my tank so that my fish can eat them. I think we should do it one species at a time as best as possible, rather than grabbing something that's from a completely different biome. But he's of the opinion that you can do it. Just go grab a whole handful of leaves, throw that in your aquarium. Also, he's of the opinion that the sand is super important, and that sand essentially has some nutrients that are better for plants. And also, he has an opinion about CO2, that his system will produce more CO2 than pressurized CO2 systems, he said before, and I don't agree with that. I mean, you can just prove that if you have pressurized CO2 gas, you can turn it up to whatever you want and saturate the water if that's what you're hoping to do, or you can keep it low and, you know, productive. So we don't agree on things like that. And also, I am pro water change. I like to challenge myself and say I don't want to do water changes, but I let the nitrates and the TDS and the pH and all that, I let that dictate when I'm going to do my water changes. I don't just not do them because that's my fundamental view. So those are kind of the big differences between he and I. He might point out some more of mine, but like with the fact that I'm a long-haired hippie or something. But that's pretty much, those are the main ones. And we agree on 95% of stuff. So yeah. Let's see here. Uh, Alabib 43 says, I tried to remove a bag of chips from the sea once and found two tiny blue fish using it as cover to swim in the open. Had to leave it because it's their home now. Yeah, no, that's true. I sorry guys, I'm just trying to get more comfortable and put my foot up on this stool here. No, I totally agree with the fact that bottles and things. We as humans, we're not all bad, and we're not just destroying things. There is a whole lot of um, there's a whole lot of stuff that is helpful. Like we make artificial reefs out of the pollution and garbage that we create. When we have a bridge or something that we sink, or a boat for that matter, it's not just all bad news. It can become a thriving ecosystem for fish to gather around. Yeah. Yeah, Angel NO3 is the metabolite. Of course, high concentrations will have an effect. I agree. Fatherfish Beto Lake says Fatherfish has a more straightforward method, whereas Alex's method can be tricky to follow, especially since he does different style tanks. That's very true. So I don't have a Alex style tank. I have the lasagna style that I've probably put forward the most, but I believe that everybody's going to need different. They're gonna like Fatherfish has a pretty good like follow these instructions and you'll have success. And I think that's true for the most part. A few people hit walls or hit trouble and I get messages about it, but for the most part, I think you can have success with any number of people's method. It's just the other thing is he will admit it's not his method per se. It's like the Wallstead method and his love of deep sand substrate, because he was living in Florida where he had access to a really soft water where he lived, but really he liked using the mineral rich sand, like crushed coral sand stuff. And for having a planted tank, it can be a little tricky to get that pH balance right and everything, and to keep things not from getting way too hard or way too soft, I guess, if you had really soft water. Um, let's see here. Deep farm substrates to conserve the water table and allows for less irrigation. Deep farm substrates. Yeah. I agree that there's places where people can't use a lot of the amounts of water that we use as a hobby traditionally. And I don't think it's I think if people are trying to not do water changes, it can be a noble goal in itself, just not using as much water for the hobby. But I also think that, doing some water changes, and depending on the species, dilution is the solution to pollution. If you've ever heard that little rhyme, it's true. Add more water and any of the problems and toxins you have in your tank will probably get dissolved to some degree, usually, unless they're coming from your water. Um, let's see here. I have a stair step guppy and a stair step minnow. Ian, what's going on, brother? Good to see you. Angel, people, please don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you, Angel, brother. I appreciate it, my friend. Um, you have duckweed in your tanks, so you have no choice but to add plants. Yeah, duckweed is uh, it's a blessing and a curse. You will probably never have too many nitrates if you have a ton of duckweed or water lettuce, but you will probably never get rid of it all either. No, that's not true. You can get rid of it, but it is a process for sure. Um, let's see here. Um, Oh, Dionysus was saying that the nitrate level, keeping it even under 10 parts per million, and the health of microflora and fauna. Yeah, and like, baby fish and things. It seems to be important to some degree. So to me, it's like, why risk it? The fish are clearly happier when you give them fresh water. Most fish. Now, there's exceptions to that. There's fish like bettas that aren't going to really care a ton if you change the water versus if it's old water. In fact, they may enjoy the water with tannins, and it's not oxygenated, and like it's like a bath basically for their slime coat, and stuff that uh, it causes good effects, and they want it to stay that way. But at the same time, most fish enjoy a big rainstorm or an influx of water into their habitat. And you can just see that in them coloring up and being more active when you add water. Sometimes I wonder, like, why are they, what is it? Why are they more happy, or like what? I don't get it. Like, what changed, because if you have really soft water, like zero, yeah, or the pH rather is like 7, and the TDS is RO water, it's 0. When you change the water, yeah, it's got whatever dissolved in it from plants and maybe food that was in the tank, but it makes me wonder sometimes, like, why are the fish that much happier when you add a 5-gallon bucket to a 40-gallon tank of fresh water? But you'll see them move around more. So is it the oxygenation? Is it the water flow? Maybe you could just have a power head instead. It makes me wonder, but I do think it depends on the species, like rainbow fish and like killifish and things like that hang out at the top, pencil fish. They seem to love water changes, tetras, midwater fish. Whereas others, like maybe danios and bettas and, uh, you know, fish more like that, they seem like they could take it or leave it. They're fine either way. Um, so yeah, Asha, what's going on? Good to see you. Spider Lady Kim, hello. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba. All right. Wait, Father Fish has more hair than you. Am I wrong? Maybe not as thick. He did have hair that was about this length for a long time, and then he had well, he even had longer hair than that a while ago. But he cut it all a number of years ago, and then as his channel got bigger and bigger, he did cut it because he began preaching again, and that's why he's got the nickname Father Fish, right, guys? So he used to be a Catholic priest, if you didn't know, and then he went. I think he became, was it a Protestant priest after that? Like, he changed completely, and then he got out of it altogether and became a businessman selling fish in the late 80s, early 90s. So he's been a lot of different things. He was an actor at one point. He was a freedom rider. I mean, it's kind of crazy. He used to be really involved in the civil rights movement in the 50s. Apparently, he did the like freedom rider bus, like riding buses into the deep South, and he went to school in Tennessee. He was a creative writing and playwright, was like what he wanted to do. Very interesting guy if you get to know him beyond just the fish stuff. Um, Randy, what's my best recommendation for getting rid of hair algae? I think the best video to get into hair algae, or the best way, I mean, it's to not have it in the first place. So keep your phosphates and your nitrates low, and your dissolved CO2 higher if you can. I mean, that's kind of your baseline. But if you don't want to get into that, if you don't want to deal with pressurized CO2 or high lights, then I would say you turn to your cleaning crew, and or um, your preventative care, and that is, I mean, if you already have it, you have it. So manually remove as much as you can, even though I know nobody likes doing that, but pick it up. If it's the hair kind that's like filamentous, like stringy, sticky, gummy, green, neon green, snotty kind of stuff, when you twirl it around, it sticks to itself. That's the easiest kind of algae to deal with. Even though it can like take over a tank in 2-3 days, it's the easiest to deal with. Do water changes as much as you want or don't want, but I mean, more will help with dealing with that, because you have an issue with too many nutrients, and your plant's not eating the nutrients in the water faster than the algae can. So you either have to give the plants a little boost up with pressurized CO2 and or highlight for a shorter time, a shorter window of photosynthesis in the day. And the other thing is, a lot of people have tanks and they may keep a light on for, say, 10 hours a day, but then it's in a room where there's daylight coming in the window, or there's just ambient light like there is on me right now, just around, like you're in the kitchen or you're in the whatever bedroom, garage, wherever it may be, where you've got a light source, or one of the other tanks is on staggered, and it only takes enough light. If you can read the letters on a page of a book, that's enough light for problematic algae to grow. So a lot of times people say, well, my light's only on 10 hours a day. And it's like, yeah, but you got that light bulb on in the room. Like, you're not blacking out the tank. So another thing you can do is you can make sure it's actually dark in the room, not blue lights, not anything, just actually dark enough that you can't really read. So don't just have like a light in the middle of the room on all day and all night, like some people do. Or a window that's open, and then your light schedule, you may want lights on in the fish room when you get home from work, which might be at nighttime where it's dark outside, but maybe there's a window in the room, and so at 6 in the morning, or 5 in the morning, even a lot of places, it could start to get brighter. Let's see here. ABC Biotope Creations, what's up? I see you. What's up, man? How's it going? You guys are very kind in the chat tonight. I appreciate it, but no need for all the support. Let's see here. But anyways, also I would say look up the cleanup crews. So for hard algae that has the little dots, powder looking diatom algae, as it's called, nearite snails, autocinclus, fish that rasp and eat stuff off of surfaces, they'll keep it down. Nearites will actually eat it itself. Hair algae. It turns out that they're now finding that a lot of the fish we think were algae eaters, like plecos and things, are actually biofilm and microcrustacean eaters. So they're eating little seed shrimp and ostracods and stuff that a lot of people, older than 30, like whatever, you can't see them anymore. They're little dots that the human eye wouldn't even see unless you've got 20/20 vision and you're looking really carefully. But stuff that's down at that size, there's lots of food that's in these slimy layers. Like when you touch the side of your aquarium, if you put your hand in the tank and the side is a little bit, it's got a film on it. Well, that has a bunch of protein and other things in it. And so your fish are grazing on that glass, and they're eating that more than probably the algae in a lot of cases. But then there are some cyanobacterias and things like spirulina that your fish actually may be eating. Like the actual spirulina itself is what they're after, and they want that nutrient. Sorry, I'm going to stand just because of my back, you guys. But yeah, Zombie Cat, what's up? Good to see you, my friend. Hello, Zombie Cat. Zombie Cat. All right, let's see here. ABC Biotope Creations. It's always good to see you too, buddy, Kenny. Rippling Ophelia, hello. I like no water changes on little tanks, but it won't work the same for monster fish tanks, is what you're saying. No, I agree. At a certain size fish, or at a fish that eats only protein, unless you have a huge amount of water, like 1,000 gallons for you probably need more than that, actually. Let me just say theoretically. So say theoretically you want to keep Oscars and not do water changes. You would probably need something like 5,000 gallons to keep 2 or 3 of them and not have the nitrates grow up and like the food, because they're messy eaters. They won't go down and finish what wasn't mid water falling. But if you had a cleanup crew of, you know, catfish and mid-water eaters too that were going to help them, you know, you could add some plants and things. But really, dilution in nature is what makes it okay. But they would not do well in, say, 100 gallons of water. Even if it's enough water for them, you can't have enough water being replaced to deal with the amount of waste and just debris and organic like stuff that they would leave behind missing eating while they're in there. But yeah, no, small tanks, nano fish, even if they're predatory fish. In fact, actually, I like nano fish that are predatory, like bettas and batis and you know, little gudgeons and gobies and things like that that are going to eat scuds, and they're going to eat seed shrimp and hydra, planaria, whatever it may be. I like those because they are eating what's in the tank. And I think a lot of people have this dream of having a tank where you don't even need to feed it. It just has the whole ecosystem and food web that is desirable to those fish that you're keeping in there. But in order to do that, you almost need so many plants and so many hiding spots that the fish are just simply not able to eat all of what's there. So you need an area for the fish to go and eat over here and eat all the scuds at once, but still have enough scuds or enough space that they can have a colony over here that's still having babies at a rate faster than they're being eaten, obviously. So that's a tricky thing. A lot of people have tanks where any scud that's out in the open gets eaten, but for the most part, you know, they're not the only food source, or the fish are kind of hungry in between. And then you get things like planaria, where you can teach a lot of fish to eat planaria, or basically don't give them good processed food that they enjoy eating. And 3 or 4 days in, a lot of times they'll start actually trying the planaria. But for the most part, loaches, barbs, pencil fish, they'll all kind of eat things like planaria. But you watch them. If you take planaria and you suck it up with a turkey baster and then you squeeze it back into the tank and it's floating and it's like a little worm that's floating, most fish will go for it. But you'll also notice that most fish take a bite, try to swallow it, and all of a sudden they immediately spit it back out. As soon as they try to swallow it, they'll spit it back out. And it's because their stomach, their mouth is at the bottom of in the middle of the little worm, in the middle of the planaria, is a little oval opening that is their digestive system. And they basically just open that center area, and then they have digestive enzymes and acids or whatever in their stomach right there. Then I guess when they're done digesting it, after it's been closed for a day or two, they just open it up and let the waste out. They're very, very simple creatures in that sense. But when they are being eaten by fish, they must have some sort of really foul tasting chemical, or a really like a sting of some sort, or the stomach acid that breaks things down must be repulsive to fish, because they have to learn like ugh, and then you can keep eating it. Like I have hovering loaches that will just eat it you know, time after time after time. I can feed them planaria one after another, but they've had to learn that. When I first got them, they had to be going 4 or 5 days without food, and then I'd notice them on the glass, kind of picking one or two every here and there. That's the other thing. Most don't want to eat them off the glass. They want them falling mid-water to give that instinct of pouncing and eating. What's up, everybody? Let me see here. Asya says, I have a variety of tank substrate styles. Some are father fish deep substrate topped with sand. Some are MD aqua style. Some are lasagna method. Some just gravel. One just sand. Yeah, just try it all on a small scale. Yeah, I agree, Asya. I like high tech tanks. I like low tech tanks. I've had tanks that literally don't even have a lamp or a heater or anything near them, and I also have some that, you know, well, I actually don't have any right now, with CO2 running and fertilizers, and I'm, you know, hot tanks where you're trying to keep plants growing an inch a day. I don't think there is a right or wrong way. They're just different ways, and whatever your goal is, that's why I did the most recent video, not the most recent, but the other video, 2 videos ago, on the 3 questions you have to answer when setting up an aquarium. And basically, it will dictate everything. And hopefully, if you know, I don't want to do more than an hour of care a week or whatever, that will necessitate, well, you better get a good filter, or you better not overstock that tank. And you better have a fish that's not a super picky eater. You better have a community tank and a cleanup crew. And, there's videos on all those things, but they will change, and you should have your priorities in order. If you have a budget limit, well, don't want a freaking albino Biochar or whatever it may be that's super expensive. And that's going to limit you there. Beto Beto Great Lakes. What's up? Alex, is there a book that can help me learn the science of the hobby the way you understand it, or did you go to school to learn? No, that is a good question. I did go to school for archaeology and history. Now, archaeology, believe it or not, does have a lot of biology. It has anatomy, it has physiology, biology, how like decomposition works, and how things are dated age-wise, and also weather, erosion, geology, and how time and soils and things work. It has all of that in it. It's a big field, so to speak. But then people specialize in things like, oh, I do corrosive metals, or I do analysis of tooth enamel only. Like, people get very specific, and I kind of just did a general, mostly focusing on Neanderthal and human relations, almost more anthropological, but also archaeological in nature. And that did give me kind of a surface understanding of a lot of sciences. But what it did more than anything, and what I hope this channel can do for anybody watching who wants to know more, is teach you how to teach yourself, teach you how to look at sources, vet sources, just like Dennis was talking about earlier, understanding the bias of the research papers. Yes, research is great, but sometimes it's good to go in and read the peer reviews of recent science. If something's old and it's been discussed and it's 15, 20 years old plus, it may just be that, okay, that's canon. As far as we understand it in the scientific world right now, that's good enough. Great. Let's just consider that good. But if it's within 5 years, there's a good chance that it's going to be built upon or changed or expanded upon. And, it may not be the final say of how things are. And somebody may come to the table with new evidence or try to repeat the study or the research and find that it's not valid. And sometimes it takes someone calling your bluff in the scientific world, but with very boring or very, very specific issues, sometimes no one ever does call your bluff. No one ever does try the experiment again. And sometimes it can be like 100 years until the science changes, because simply nobody thought of trying it again, or they took it as it doesn't impact anything that I care about, so I'm not going to spend a year of my life and a bunch of funding to challenge it. But knowing, oh, was it done in a country that all their resources and their GDP depends on, for instance, fossil fuels, versus a country that's trying to switch completely to renewable energy? Well, maybe then when you look at a paper on the impact of oil spills or something, it's important which country that came from, or which institute. Is it known for being biased or not? Did they take money or funding from somebody? And you would go insane if you did that much investigating of every single fact or piece of evidence you heard in your life. But I do think that when you really want to dig into a topic, like in the aquarium hobby, I do, that going and doing that legwork it's probably not going to pay the bills. It's not glamorous, and it is honestly, it is work that you can assume has been done, and 99% of the time you are right. But there is that 1% of the time where nobody bothered to check if what everyone else had said in the past was true. And you go back and you check it, and it's sure enough, it turns out that that is not right. What we all have been assuming is not right, or whatever. Um, so that's where I think if you can vet your own sources and decide, I've got other videos, and on the Discord channel, that's what the Discord's about. For $3, you can go in and join us there and literally get access to where I do my research. The 15 sources in the document file. There's 15 places that I get 99% of my research done, because I can search all the scholarly journals, all the universities publishing stuff, and I can go to a source for that. And then I can go cross-check that with, for instance, FishBase, which has all the public funded research from the USGS and Geological Survey, and I can get all of this stuff about, how's this river oriented? Where does it start and end? How long is it? How deep is it? How fast does it run? All the like surveying info. And I can double check all that about the habitat if I want to. Now, most of the time, I'll just go to Wikipedia and I'll look and I'll see, okay, that river's here. And then I'll just assume that it has accurate info on that if somebody has done a species profile write-up that is accurate. But every once in a while, you'll do a search, and you'll find that what everybody's saying is wrong. So, for instance, in my time on this channel, I have found that if you Google who invented the aquarium, that's a very contentious issue. And you could say, who built the first four-sided, or maybe five if you count the bottom or a top, but usually slate was at the bottom back in the day, because they put a Bunsen burner or an oil lamp underneath the slate to heat the tank. But who built the first four-sided glass box that holds water and living organisms? There's two or three people that kind of had this idea. Now, you could say Jean Villepreux Powers, a woman from southern Italy. Well, she's from France, but she was in Italy. She probably gets the credit for being the first to order in 1832 something that she called an aquarium, and she wrote letters to other naturalists all around Europe. But then there's people like there's a Dutch guy that in the 1500s was using glass bowls to look at carp and other fish, and he was doing sketches and scientific drawings about them. And there's monks, Augustinian monks, that were doing genetic research on silver scaled carps versus carp that have no scales, rather what they call leather carp and mirror carp, and the genetics of that. Just like we assume that Gregory Mendel did all the genetic mapping in the 1800s. Well, going all the way back to the 10th century, there's actually similar things to Punnett squares, where they said, okay, the fish with the glittery scales, if it has a baby with any other fish, they'll all have glittery scales. So they would say that, and they would say, okay, well, what about the fish with no scales? Oh, it has to have babies with another fish with no scales for that to have babies with no scales. Otherwise, if it has babies with a fish that has anything other than no scales, never do the babies have scales. So they figure these things out way before it's officially stated in a lot of cases. And a lot of people confuse that with like, oh, well, Google says X, Y, or Z. The other thing is to, for instance, hey, Lake Missoula Aquatics and Drifters Workshop, what's going on? And Brett, hello, also. Okay, so hold on, I'm going to interrupt myself here. But Brett says, ammonia quite high in a cycled dirt cycling dirted tank. Should I let it run and do a water? Yeah, I do a water change, do a little water change, like 30 or 40%, and just let it keep running. Because the thing is, if it is leaching high amounts of ammonia from the substrate or soil, that needs to be leached enough that whatever filter media you have is compensating for it. So it could be leaching at a rate of 5 nano or whatever. Let's make up a unit, 5 units a day. And that's fine as long as your bacteria is eating 6 units a day or whatever, is capable of eating that much. But if you all of a sudden do a huge water change and it's leaching 5 units a day, you may only have bacteria that's working 2 units a day because you already took it out manually by doing the water change. So that's the only thing to worry about with water changes. Don't do too many too soon while a tank is cycling, because you do, even if you have a lot of ammonia coming out, you will build up enough bacteria in your filter media eventually that it will compensate for it, unless you have some crazy thing in there that's like pure ammonia and you just have like ammonia pellets or fertilizer in there, then it won't catch up. But it may take a week longer in some cases for your bacteria to grow, but it should grow rather quickly. So if this doesn't correct itself within a week or so, then I would perhaps look into what's causing that much ammonia. Because if it's an aqua soil or even like a potting soil that you get from the store, it shouldn't be leaching so much that no filtration can catch up. It should come to an equilibrium, and if you capped it, it really should. So if you have a sand cap over that, that should keep it leaching maybe 4 parts or 4 units a day of ammonia. And then over time, it may drop down to 2 parts. But if you undo that cap, or if you start pulling up plants or something 2 months, 3 months from now, when that ammonia spikes back up because you disturbed it to 5 or 10 units of ammonia a day because that hot soil is in there. We say hot when it has a lot of ammonia in it, or a lot of nitrogen compounds, ammonia, nitrate, nitrites, ammonium nitrate, things like that, ammonium, ammonia. Then it's more dangerous to have that substrate just sitting there. Even if it is capped, you have to be aware not to disturb it. If you know that when you cycled it, it took some extra time, but know that when you're cycling it, you will get there. Just don't do water changes every single day. You need to do them like every 3 days or something like that. But they can be fairly large water changes, up to 50%, I would say. But it's best to do maybe 30% every 5 days or something like that. And then your bacteria your nitrosoma and your nitrobacillus are going to populate to a point that is happy to deal with the output of your substrate. Bro, soon as I start watching, my wife wants me to cook. I hear you, man. I know how that goes. It's just life, right? Well, have a good one. Jesus Crisco, what's up? Hey there. Mick says, for your knowledge, I keep some tanks with old bulb lights with T8s and some with LEDs and some wait, where'd that go? Some with LEDs and some with only light from another tank standing next to it. My low light plants do okay with less light. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, low light in the jungle, in the rainforest, I mean, holy smokes, you guys, that means low light. Like if you are in the thick of the equatorial jungle rainforest, sometimes as little as 2% of the actual UV radiation or sun rays makes it down to the forest floor through all the canopy. And you're in a ravine, and there's you're in a creek in a ravine, and then whatever hits the water, usually I believe it's every foot 50%. No, that's not quite right. It's actually an exponential curve, but in the first few feet of water, you start losing color and you start losing intensity of light. So you start losing luminosity and lumens or par very quickly when it hits the water. So if it was already dim enough like that it looks like almost like nighttime when you're in the rainforest down under a thick canopy, by the time it gets to the creek at the bottom, like Borneo or something, or Indonesia, like those mountain hill streams, it may be like as dim as a room that has one light bulb on the other side of the room. That might be all that your like Java fern needs to survive. Pretty crazy. Never do water changes. Trust the process. I disagree, but that's one opinion. You can wait though. Like I said, eventually your bacteria will eat enough of the ammonia. But the thing is, your bacteria can also die, and then when it dies, it also produces ammonia. Ironically, so it can die because there's not enough food for it. It dies, and then your ammonia goes up, and it takes another day or two at least for the bacteria to start to compensate for it. But once your tank is cycled, it's something like every 12 to 17 hours for nitrosoma and nitrobacillus to have a doubling time. So literally, if you have 1 million cells in there, you'll have 2 million by the next day. And within 2 or 3 days, you should have, 1 million times 1 million. So that's 2 million the next day. And then the next day, you'll have 4 million, and then you'll have 8 million. So you'll have 8 times as many to deal with the ammonia within like 3 days. So the cells will catch up eventually. They'll catch a tipping point. But that's why I said if it doesn't within a week kind of correct, then don't keep changing the water and stuff. Reassess where all that ammonia is coming from, and if you've got a good cap on there. Alex just got a male-female pair of blue eyes. Any tips on breeding? Water changes actually for blue eyes. That's what I usually like with most of those like pseudomcgills and stuff like that. That's what I would recommend. Andy says, hey, Andy, by the way, I don't have algae issues myself. My tanks are mature and I watch the nutrients I add. I was just curious about the broken photo period versus algae fad. The broken photo period is a little tough on plants. So plants, in theory, only need a few hours of light at a time, to like about 90 minutes to 120 minutes to realize, oh, it's daytime, start photosynthesizing and get it going. And it'll start photosynthesizing way sooner than that, but it has to get into its optimum or peak performance mode and then have a time to actually go to sleep, the plant, and start turning its starches and carbs into sugars or energy, and making, instead of making oxygen like it does all day, it starts making CO2 the way it breathes. So it should have time to switch over and to realize that. A lot of plants will open and close. And if you do an hour on, an hour off, an hour on, hour off, those plants don't ever hit their peak performance. They don't hit their stride. They honestly just get stressed and kind of cease to grow, right? And sometimes they even die. But I think if you are splitting the photo period like twice a day, as long as each period is over 4 hours and you have strong light, I think it's fine. Also, a lot of people with some of the best aquariums I've seen only do like 6 hours of light, but they have really strong light, like grow lights for even like terrestrial plants, like that you'd see on the market for that. And they do fine. They grow some of the best aquascapes and don't grow the algae. But the thing is, you need a true blackout in between those periods, or you end up with some problems for sure. But we could talk about that for a whole episode, even, We hope your dinner's good, honey. Let's see. Hi, Tyson P says, Hey, looking for a small, calm cichlid to go with my angel and tetra community. Thinking larger than a Bolivian ram and smaller than an Acara. I mean, yeah, you could use a crebensis. They're usually pretty chill. They will confront angelfish. Angelfish and cribs can get along. I've had them get along. But if you have a big group of angels, they will, one or two individuals will oftentimes feel bold enough to go mess with the cribs. But for the most part, they'll be just as ornery as one another, and neither one will get the upper hand. They'll both just kind of warn each other with like flared fins and false charges, and then that's it. But the stress of that can make it so that neither one of them is going to have babies and feel comfortable. They're always in kind of on guard mode. So, I mean, no matter what you do, make sure you have enough plants and or hardscape or space in the aquarium that you're splitting up the line of sight so that the angels can hang out in midwater. Cribs tend to hang out low or in midwater, but mostly right on the ground of the tank. So, give them some caves or give them whatever. But there are also plenty of apistos, like people said, that would also work. Some apistos are a little more finicky, but I am seeing my apistos, Lush and Salty, also just asked, have I been seeing any spawning behavior? I've been seeing the dancing, a little bit of dancing with the male, and then he'll go into a cave and try to get the female to follow him. Or if the female goes into the cave, he'll go and block it, but then she'll try to slip past him and get out. I haven't seen them yet, like both into it, unfortunately, but I hope soon they'll feel comfortable enough. Yeah, and that's another good one. Tiffany mentioned she has yellow rock crebensis. So some of the other, so there's pelvica chromis, and there's all of the pulcher varieties that are caused because they were bred in captivity, like the Nigerian reds and just different collection points. But also there's like purple ones, albino ones, balloon body ones, you name it, just like the rams. But I would say you can also do the same for the crib-like fish. There are Enigmatochromis, Lucanusi, or Lucanusi. Those are really cool. They're like a blue crib kind of that's its own species named after Oliver Lucanus. And there's also various rock crebensis that are bigger than normal cribs. They're like 4 inches to 5 inches, but they're still relatively peaceful. There's also like Congolensis and things like that. So there are a lot of those like crib adjacent creatures too. But if you go over to South America, you're probably going to be picking from African cichlids or South American cichlids. The Central Americans, like you could do something like, a Honduran red point would also be an option, but they can be a little aggressive, even though they're probably the most peaceful of the convict cichlid groups. They're still a little aggressive. They're probably not going to eat your tetras or anything like that. But they may get defensive of their spawning ground. But you have a lot of options, and actually, in fact, the black line cichlid is another great one, or the little acaras, the honey or the gold eye cichlids. Those are great. Like laticaras are great. The whole issue of Amazonas, the nanochromis, those would be awesome. Like that at the top fish there. They're beautiful, and there are 5 or 6 species in that grouping. I guess you could do an Ivanacar, but they're a little more aggressive too. But yeah, this whole issue of Amazonas, it has a whole bunch of suggestions of, fairly chill mid-size and small size cichlids. I mean, look at all these different wild cribs. Oh, is it not gonna come on, magazine? Different cribs. They're slight variants, but those are actual different species. They just, they look really similar. but there's a lot that do different things. Some are mouth rooters, some are sand digging, like nest spawners and so forth. Hey, George, what's up? So guys, I got to get out of here, but I do appreciate y'all. If you want and you haven't yet, I'm going to, let's see, where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Here it go. Here it go. I was going to invite you. I was going to invite you, my friends. Invite you, all you beautiful people. Here we go. Here we go. Wow, stop. Sorry, guys, having difficulty with my brain. Yeah, let's go with brain. Copy that. And then we can go over here and hopefully will this app wake up and is it going to give me what I want? What I want. Oh yeah, so in the chat right now, that is the most up-to-date Discord. You got 3 days at least before it goes away. But go there and you'll get you'll be able to get into, yeah, Dennis, right on. Yeah, Nanochromis transvestitis. Those ones, the female's more pretty than the male. That's why they have that name. But they're super cool. They're very pretty fish, and so is the splendens, and so is the, I think there's a Pulcher one too, but there's definitely a splendens. They're all a lot of fun. Dino Sauce has a question. Well, okay, we can do it next time then for sure. All right, Mick has another question. Ask, let's see here. Fishtory, Fidencio Cyprian asked one of my autosync die, and I don't know why the other autos are just fine and have been eating. All the parameters look great, but I do not have was it weak, older pay? Okay. So I don't know why those die sometimes, but I have also had that happen where a random autosynclus just dies. I don't know if it's stress. I don't know if it's that they're grazing and there's something going on. My biggest guess is that another fish in the tank may have been harboring a parasite. That parasite lived its life cycle to the point where it left the fish, which it may have been dormant or an egg or a larvae, whatever you want to call it, in its life cycle. Then it goes out through the fish's poop or however it gets out, mucus or whatever. There's lots of different life cycles out there. Anything you can imagine can happen with parasites. And then those autosynclus are such grazers that it probably picked up something and then that slowly sapped the nutrients out of it. That would be my guess. Don't know for sure, but they are very prone to that. Catfish in general are very prone to that. But yeah. So guys, I have to get out of here, but join us over in the Discord for more. And yeah, so if you have questions, I'll try my best to answer them. I'm more this channel has gotten more interactive than it has ever been before. Now is a great time to get involved. Also, my videos are only going out to like 500 to 1,000 of y'all. So if you got the notice about the live stream and stuff, you guys are more plugged in than anyone. If you're on the Discord too, then like right now is a one-on-one time. The fact that this is a 75,000 person channel, I can't tell. Like it's literally slower than it's ever been. Probably because the time in the hospital, there's like this weird delay, and then the algorithm slows down. But let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy this tight knit community time before we get all these chaotic questions hopping in of people like, should I put my goldfish in a shark tank? Whatever. Hydrocool carrot. Well, thanks. I appreciate your support, everybody. And you too, Hydrocool carrot. All right, guys. Have a great night. And yeah, I don't know. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope the rest of your autos do okay, Mick. I hate that. That sucks when you don't know what it is. And same issue, Dino Sauce says had the same issue too. So yeah, I don't know, and I also, it's hard to get them to totally give up a parasite too. Like you can use an anti-dewormer, but it could be a protozoan, so that's tricky and frustrating. But I don't know what y'all want to see, but I think I will probably ask a question of um, taking out submissions for topics. You know, do we want to see some species spotlights again? Do we want to do you like the current issues of things like, you know, microplastics is really, and nanoplastics is a real bummer. People don't seem to want to learn about that. But I do feel like I have a responsibility to cover some of it, some of these things that are affecting life on the planet in general. Um, but I'll give you a little bit of sugar with a spoonful of vitamins of the stuff that you need to know. Same with like, I also have done a ton of research on the Ecuadorian gold mining scandal. They've claimed that only 1/4 of the amount of gold exiting the country has been exiting the country, but it's been through like deals with China and really shady backroom, unaccounted for things where it's not even getting taxed. And same with mercury coming out of Venezuela and other countries, Brazil as well, where it's going into Guyana or Suriname, other places where they've put laws into place to stop mercury from being even legal because they don't want it used for mining. And yet there's this whole rich network of stuff going on back and forth, and the gold markets there also very corrupt, very dangerous. Indigenous people are dying, stuff like that. But do I cover that stuff or do I shush up? You know, I think these are important things. So yeah, but anyways, yeah, like Mick says here, if I missed your question, try on the next stream on Friday. I try to do Tuesdays and Fridays. Sometimes my health doesn't cooperate, and y'all kind of have known that, so I don't always announce it. But I'll usually, if I know, oh, I'm going to make up for it on Wednesday, I have something scheduled on Tuesday, a doctor appointment or something, then I we'll try to let y'all know in the community tab, both now on Discord and on YouTube. But YouTube has a whole new community system that we don't know what it's going to be like. We don't know how far it's going to go or what services it'll have. I think they're trying to counter all the people using Discord. But Discord pays us way better in that Discord gives us 90% of any of our super chats and memberships and things, whereas YouTube gives us somewhere between 50 and they take somewhere between 30 and 50% depending on what it is, a super chat, a super thanks, or whatever. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, have a good one. Take care of your critters. Take care of your fish, your plants, and of course, take care of yourself, or you can't do that stuff. You know, got to take care of yourself too. I will see ye all on Friday, if not before, and probably have a video out. Hopefully, that would be by Thursday. So have a great one, and I will talk to you later. Bye bye.